Hello, everyone, and thank you for attending today's webinar, Enhance Subscriber Growth with a Modern Approach to Network Planning, sponsored by Precisely. Before we begin, I will cover a few housekeeping items. On the left-hand side of your screen is the Q&A. If you have any questions during the webcast, please type your question into the Q&A box and submit your questions to our speakers. All questions will be saved, so if we don't get to answer you, we may follow up via email. At the bottom of your audience console are multiple application widgets you can use. If you have any technical difficulties, please click on the yellow help widget. Here you can find answers to common questions. A copy of today's slide deck is available for download in the green resource list widget. Near the end of today's presentation, please take 1 minute to complete the survey that's open on your screen. Your feedback is extremely helpful. An on-demand version of the webcast will be available about 1 day after the event and can be accessed using the same audience link that was sent to you earlier today. I would now like to turn the event over to Heavy Reading's Research Director, Cloud and Security, Jim Hodges. Jim?
Thanks, operator, and welcome everybody to today's webinar. In today's webinar, we're focusing on location data, and we're going to do a couple of things looking at location data in a couple of contexts. But at the end of the day, what we're really focusing on is how to leverage location data to enhance subscriber acquisition and also really optimize, the optimal network planning decisions. So let me first start by introducing our two speakers from Precisely. We have joining us today Danny Engel. Danny is Senior Account Executive Telecommunications at Precisely. Welcome, Danny. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about your role at Precisely.
Sure, thanks, Jim. Yeah, so I've focused on a group of communication service providers in the US. So I've got about 15 carriers. My background is about 25 years experience in the telecommunications space. Spent about 20 of those years selling billing support systems and operational support systems. So that means the order management systems, the scheduling and dispatch systems, the billing, rating, and invoicing, and all the omni-channel interfacing when it comes to signing up new customers, whether it's your mobile app, your e-commerce, your dealers, your point of sale.
Okay, perfect. Okay, and also joining us today is Tim McKenzie. Tim is Solution Architecture Director at Precisely. Tim, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure, thanks. So I'm Tim McKenzie. I lead a global team of business solutions architects, and you may be wondering what's a business solutions architect. So our role is to attack business problems with technology and with data and sometimes a little innovation to solve whatever challenges we're seeing in industry. Spend a lot of time in the telecom space, but my team is more industry agnostic. So we touch base with a lot of industries. I will say the telecom space is one of the most interesting and exciting just because of the scale of data and the even small percentage problems can become big deals in the telecom space because of the scale of data, the scale of subscribers that are in play here. So looking forward to walking through this material with you guys today.
Perfect, thanks. So let me cover the agenda quickly. So we're going to focus on sort of some of the trends in telecom that are really shaping decisions and technology trends and deployments. And we'll talk about better network design and building principles, and then we'll talk about improving ROI on network CapEx investment. And we'll also focus on enabling customer experience. And also in value discussion, we'll talk a little bit about some of the tangible benefits of utilizing location data and location intelligence. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Danny, but he's going to, before he jumps into the sort of trends, he'll give us a little bit more background on Precisely. So Danny, I'll push out your first slide. Please go ahead.
Thank you. So, as Jim just described, we're going to walk through the trends in telecom. We're going to talk about the design, improving your ROI, jumping into, ensuring that you have a great customer experience. And then we'll walk through how we work with our customers with the business justification and ROI process. So, thank you. So a little bit about Precisely. Let me just back up here. Okay, so Precisely, you guys might know us previously as Pitney Bowes Software, Trillium, SyncSort. Those were the core companies that formed Precisely in May of 2020. we rebranded to the name Precisely. So hold on, we just keep jumping back here. Let's get the right slide up. So what our focus is our focus is data integrity when it comes to accuracy, consistency, and context with your data. You want to ensure that you're making the right choices and right decisions based on accurate data. So we're powering those confident business decisions. We work with 99 of the top Fortune 100 companies. We work with all the tier 1 carriers, majority of the tier 2 carriers, and many of the tier 3 carriers. So we've got a big focus on telecom. In addition, we work in the financial industry, the insurance industry, healthcare industry. And again, our goal is ensuring that you have accurate data. One of the key things in this area that we do is that we connect with Snowflake and Databricks. Those are the data lake platforms where many folks want to be able to utilize that data and be able to merge all their data together to make those decisions. So the company's been around for about 50 years. We're global, and that's a little bit of background on Precisely. Okay, we offer a suite of solutions. So what you're seeing here is our cloud services solutions. This is an interoperable modular solution. On the left-hand side, the first area that we focus on is integration. We're working with companies to connect their ERP systems, their CRM systems, their design and planning systems, their inventory systems, their data lakes, their mainframes. So we help pull the data together so you can be able to pass that information between the systems. The second area from left to right is the data observability. And when we talk about observability, what we're referring to here is think of as your key performance indicators such as your sales, your orders, your trouble tickets, your inventory items. What we do is we basically, we have high, medium, and low alerts that are looking at if your data changes. And we're looking at this in real time. So if you notice that your revenue goes down in real time, that's something you might want to look at immediately and take a look at and have your folks. So we're proactively giving you a notice there. In addition, if your sales orders go up, they spike up, what's the reason for that? Did you have a great campaign? So we're able to provide the team, real-time information so they can look at it, analyze it, and if there's problems, fix it immediately, as opposed to the system, continuously having issues with, potentially a bug in the software or an upgrade that was done in one of the systems that impacts that data. As we move to the next area, we've got data governance. And this is kind of a proactive way to ensure that you're cataloging all your information, the history, we call that lineage, which system it started with, when it was migrated to. You're able to set policies and workflows around it. And you're literally able to, also set who has the rights to view the data. So you have a proactive process to govern your data going forward. The fourth area is quality. And what we're looking at here is we're standardizing and validating the quality of your data, whether it's your emails, your phone numbers. We're looking at duplicates. We're ensuring that if data didn't come over properly during a merger and acquisition, we're ensuring that it's corrected. And this is, again, a proactive process that you're updating every time that new subscriber, partner, location comes in. You're able to ensure that the quality is accurate. Now that you have, the quality and the governance process, it's important to have location. So we have our location information, and we're going to get into this further in our meeting, but it's important to note that we're talking about the accurate rooftop lat long location information. Many of the other systems have like a zip code or a zip +4, and that's a very wide area. So location matters when you are trying to, sell to your customers, campaign to your customers, build your network. So we'll talk about adding the location and the importance of it. Then another key area is the spatial information. When you're designing and planning, you want to be able to put boundaries around where your network is. Boundaries when you're doing campaigns, so you know exactly where your customers are, and you want to be able to view this. So with our spatial and our distance and our calculations, we're able to provide a very clear, precise area that you can use for design and planning, as well as campaigning. And then, at the end of the day, enrichment, you've got your customer information, you've got your network information, you've got your product information. But what's also very important is to have a complete 360-degree view by adding additional information like demographics, firmographics, building and parcel information. So that really gives you a better view, better attributes to make those important decisions. So these are the 7 pillars that we work with our cloud services. Tim, I'm going to hand this over to you to kind of talk about some of the objectives in the telecom space.
There you go. Yeah, so thanks, Danny, for the introduction of Precisely. I think the rest of the time we're going to talk about challenges and opportunities in the telecom space, and then how we can apply the capabilities that Danny just described to help solve those problems and challenges. So as we look at telecom in 2023, we see some trends consistently across all the companies that we're talking to. Number one trend, and it's been out there for a few years, is heavy investment in networks. So increasingly, there's competition from all fronts, right? So there's companies that used to provide just wireless service that have now figured out how to drive that wireless service into a home or into an office, and so that's created competition in areas where fiber generally used to play. And then on the other side, we're seeing fiber providers come up with new ways and innovative ways to deliver service in wider areas as well. So that means we're seeing an increasingly competitive environment that requires a significant amount of network investment. And when we say significant amount, even the smaller companies that we're talking to are investing in the billions, not the millions. Once those investments are made, there's also tremendous pressure internally within each of these telecoms to convert that investment into revenue, and that conversion comes in with the terms penetration rate. So being able to, once a network is laid or once an area is lit up, let's convert the users that are in that area over to our network so that we can start to deliver revenue against that investment of network that we made. To do that, we're seeing our customers in the telecom space increasingly focus on customer experience. So as I mentioned before, competition's big here, but also consumers and business users alike have increasingly grown used to engaging with companies who know them well. And telecoms, unfortunately, have in the past maybe been labeled as ones that don't know their customers so well. So we're seeing trends certainly where lots of investment is being made from telecoms into customer experience, whether it's from onboarding or it's from marketing or from ongoing interactions with subscribers to increase retention. And then a trend across all the pieces that I just talked about is a goal towards efficiency. And I've heard this multiple times. Every time the folks that I'm talking to say it as if they're the first that have said this or thought of this, but we're seeing a trend across the space to try to find ways to get to a place of human by exception, meaning that machines are doing the vast majority of the work and only anomalies rise to the level of having to be touched by a human. And even in that case, that we make sure that if those anomalies rise to a human, we give the human enough information to quickly resolve the issues. So these are some of the priorities we're seeing. We also see a common set of requirements to achieve these priorities. So as companies are investing billions of dollars in network, they're wanting to make sure that those investments are made wisely and that they're making those investments and putting those investments in the place that has the highest likelihood of creating a return. So in order to do that, lots of effort is being made to better understand markets and the potential that each of those markets brings to create that revenue opportunity. We're also seeing an emphasis, as we mentioned before, in understanding customers, whether it's businesses or consumers, so that we make the right offer at the right time. We put the right product mix in place with the knowledge and understanding of the target audience that we're engaging with. And then we're making sure we're seeing an emphasis today on streamlining the provisioning of services. Not too many years ago, I can remember signing up for cable service, and it was a 3 to 5 day effort, just to get the thing up and running. That's not the goal of this industry today, for sure. The goal is to make things quick and efficient and easy, so that you can easily convert to a new service, that you can easily turn it on, that you don't get, as a consumer, get exposed to all the back-end processes that the telecom has to go through in order to provide you with that service. And with all of this, with the ultimate goal, if we do more and more by human by exception, we turn these engagements into highly profitable events. So really, we're seeing this emphasis on automating the process of deciding where to build, automating the process of understanding who the customer is, automating the process of deciding on the product mix that we would offer them, and then again, automation and provisioning it after we actually convert a potential customer to a subscriber. Now, to get to this, there's certainly a set of challenges, and I think, Danny, I'll let you talk through some of the challenges that we see in the space, and at a high level, what we do and how we help our customers achieve this. So back to you, Danny.
Thanks, Tim.
I've always wanted to say that, by the way, back to you. I don't know if I've ever said that before, but...
Love it. So yeah, great lead in. There's lots of trends, lots of spending, and there are lots of challenges that all carriers are facing. And so we've got a list of some of the areas that are concerning for the carriers. The first area is that all their systems, in most cases, are not connected together. So you've got your billing system where your folks are taking the orders. You've got your engineers out in the field and they're doing the designing and planning. You've got outside plant, inside plant. You have Salesforce, so they're not necessarily talking together, and that creates problems. So there's different data in these systems. What's the source of truth? Then most of these companies, your communication service providers, have grown through acquiring other companies, and when they do these acquisitions, they've got to put these companies together. They've got to migrate data from one system to another system. In many cases, there's missing data that comes over, or there's additional data that has duplicates, creating data challenges there as well. So when now you have all these challenges, you're like when you're looking at where we're going to build or where we have existing network, that leads to, in order to try to mitigate those challenges, you're having to spend a lot of money by sending human capital, people out to go look at these locations, inspect them. That's very expensive. Another area that folks don't want to spend money on. So another challenge. The fourth one talks about do you really know where your network is and how many doors you actually cover within your area? And a lot of times your billing system will say there's 80 units here. Your design system may say there's 65, and really there's no source of truth to really know exactly how big the market is. So, companies want to know the accuracy of really, hey, that actual building has 100 units. Things have changed over the last 2 years. There's been more buildings. So they're making poor choices. Again, another area they'd like to improve. And that really comes into if they had additional data, additional attributes to know, is it a residential building? Is it a mixed-use building? Who owns that building? They really need additional data. Is that building serviceable? So they're missing a lot of context that would help them make the decisions. So these are kind of the areas that carriers are saying, hey, what type of solutions are available to help me? So we're going to get into that. As Tim mentioned, these carriers are going to spend a lot of money. They're going to be investing, millions, billions of dollars in these cases. And the real question is, are they going to make the right choice with their investments? And it comes down to these three things. Are you building in the right place? Are you marketing and servicing to the right people? And the last one here is, are you delivering the services as promised? So it's important. If you make the wrong choice, you lose money, you lose human capital as far as wasted time, and your shareholders are not going to be happy. So as we get into what's important here is the address does matter. The address begins with your customer, begins with your network. It's where your support people are going to be. It's where your customer service are going to be. So location does matter, and it's really, really important to get that location right. So what we have here is we've kind of gotten into, talked about the challenges. All these challenges, they kind of lead into your business processes, which are limited and have challenges. And these are the areas that we're seeing companies come to us or saying, hey, how do we solve these areas? As Tim described, who's your customer? Where are you going to build? What do you want to offer them? Can you provision profitably? Can you make the right choices with these processes? So we start with the left. Companies are saying, hey, we want to generate a target list of customers, but in order to do that, you need to know more information about who you're targeting. Are you targeting consumer? Are you targeting small business? Are you targeting large business? And so you need to know, what type of customer it is. Is it residential? Is it business? You want to know if it's serviceable. You want to know if it's an HOA that you might want to target. Is it an apartment building, a condo? So as you create these lists, you need to have those specific attributes when you're putting together your targets. Number two, it's important to know you have different sales teams, right? You've got your residential team. You've got these small, medium businesses. You may have the folks that call on government accounts. So it's important to be able to segment and understand which team is going to go out and target those specific customers. As we look into the design and planning, you need to know distances. So, by understanding the address and the distances, you can understand costs. You can understand, where you want to build next. So all these different processes roll together, and there's different challenges within them. If there's when you're turning on service, you need to be able to roll a truck to go turn on service. You need to be able to send the invoice to the appropriate location. If you have the wrong address, these things are not going to happen timely. You're going to waste more money. When you need to support a customer, again, you need to know exactly where they are. You need to be able to provide that great experience. So all these different processes require accurate addressing, require additional insight, and these are the areas that we're able to come in, understand their current process, and then put an improved process in place to generate revenue quickly, because you just spent all that money, and also be able to reduce costs to improve the processes. As Tim was talking about, a lot of these things can be automated. So as we continue here, I'm going to pass to Tim, and he's going to talk about a little bit some of the challenges with addresses to improve those processes.
Yeah, so as Danny mentioned, address plays a big role in lots of parts of the journey that a telecom takes, from building out network to converting subscribers to servicing those subscribers. And two of the areas that addresses play a big part, names play a big part, as we talked about earlier, this desire that telecoms have to create a better customer experience. That means you have to know the customer. So not only do addresses play a role, but names as well. These are some examples of challenges with names, where you quickly, with a human eye, could identify duplicate records or duplicate instances of me as a person. And then we look at the addresses, and we see malformed addresses. We see addresses that have issues with them, and lots of challenges in data, especially when we think about how it goes from billing systems to operational systems, and the issues that are related to that. Could you hit the next slide, please? I'm having a little trouble advancing here.
I'll do it, Tim. Here we go.
Okay, yep. So as you can see, zip codes obviously challenge, phone numbers a challenge. All the data the helpful data that actually describes the customer. Go ahead and keep building this out, Danny, if you can. And these are all great examples of issues that are not uncommon within data. And then when we talk about an address itself, you think about an address, it looks fairly simple. It looks, we see a street number, we see a street name, but then we realize, what? All these different pieces actually are managed, all these different pieces are managed by different authorities. I'm going to see if I can take over here. For some reason, the build is not happening for me. So I think I'm just going to have to verbally tell you to forward it. So yeah, so in this example of an address, we realized that the different pieces of the address are actually owned by different authorities, which means that they change at different frequencies. They might apply different standards for quality, and which if you're starting to make business decisions on addresses, this the data quality issues that result or come up related to addresses can be a significant impact to your business. Danny, could you forward this one more? Yeah, thank you.
There we go. Tim, you ready to go to the next one?
Yeah. So I'm sorry. So when we approach addresses and we approach this idea of operationalizing business decisions, operationalizing interactions with customers, we would organize our approach into these three categories. One is organize. So organizing address data to a unique and persistent ID. So no matter the system that we're interacting with, no matter if we're taking data out of a network planning system, or we're taking data out of a billing system, or if we're taking data out of a CRM system, we can always apply a unique and persistent ID to the address to create a way to enable these systems to talk to each other, no matter the quality of the address data that is stored, from a legacy perspective in each of those systems. Along with the unique and persistent ID is a heavy emphasis, and Danny, you mentioned this earlier, on location accuracy. So being able to not only apply this unique and persistent ID to a location, but then to have confidence that the location, the latitude and longitude that we've applied to that address is accurate and complete. And we'll talk about in the next slide some of the challenges with that. So once we organize data to a unique and persistent key, this gives us then the opportunity to begin to enrich it. So that enrichment could be interesting things that the telecom has already in place within its system, such as what are the network elements connected to a given address? What is the average signal strength associated to this address? What is the taxing jurisdiction associated to this address? So a wide breadth of data assets that a telecom may already have in play that they can apply to these unique and persistent IDs to make analytics easier. But in addition to that, so from the Precisely side, we offer about 9,000 attributes per unique and persistent ID, or per location, that describe in great detail the people, the places, and the things that go on at each address. And that enables telecoms to get to some of the goals that we talked about at the beginning. And ultimately, this effort is to turn messy address data into actionable insights through analytics. So we're converting messy addresses, messy shapes on maps, messy descriptions of neighborhoods or service areas or buildings, and we're turning that into rows and columns of data that can pop into any of the common analytic systems that are available in the market today to begin to ask and answer the questions that we described earlier in this session. So let's maybe dig a little bit deeper into the accuracy side. Danny, if you would progress to the next slide. I don't think it has a build. I hope not. Maybe it does. Yeah. So in a lot of systems, accuracy, in a lot of solutions, accuracy is maybe a less of a goal. If we think about some of the applications that you may use in your day-to-day business or day-to-day personal life where you're entering an address. I know we've all had those cases where we want to go to the taco shop. We type it into the internet or any of the internet search engines, and it generally tells us where the taco shop is. And when we get there, we can walk around and find the taco shop, and it's reasonably close to the point that was pointed to on the map. However, when we think about operationalizing decisions for a telecom, reasonably close is not necessarily that helpful. So if we look at the instance on the right, these addresses are reasonably close to the area. But if you think about if I'm laying fiber and I'm creating connection into each building, I really need an understanding that looks a little bit more like on the left, not a little bit, a lot more like on the left. So this is an understanding of, even though these addresses are distinctly different, they even talk about two different streets, have different street numbers, we've been able to identify that all these addresses actually reside in the same building. And when we think about as a network provider and you're building, delivering fiber, you want to know that I'm not having to create connections to 4 or 5 different discrete locations in order to turn on or activate all these different addresses. I can create a connection to one single building, and boom, I've activated now 5 different locations. So having this insight in a automated way that does not require a human to look at it and drag and drop pieces and parts together to make a decision enables the telecoms to automate processes of either building out network, or once the network's built out and someone comes with one of these addresses, making a smart decision that, yes, you're actually in a building that we've connected. Yes, we will gladly turn on service and sell you a subscription, to engaging with customers once this building is lit up, understanding all the potential subscribers that we would have in this building, and being able to put together a marketing program to go and convert them. So in order to get to good smart addresses, we follow a general set of principles from a technology perspective on how we deliver solutions. Okay, it bounced around again. So are you on the geo addressing slide? I'm afraid my...
Yeah, just go to the geo slide.
Yeah, so generally 3 different pieces. So type ahead, we've all experienced type ahead in the past, right? So if you go into a search engine and you start to type in an address or any kind of search that you might try, you start to see a list of potential addresses or potential suggestions for you to pick. We think this is a super strong methodology for ensuring the highest quality data. So in all of our applications, we're suggesting that telecoms put at the front end of CRM systems and network planning systems, any system where addresses are being put in individually, have the capability to suggest choices for those addresses. And then from there, we execute two key features here: address quality, so ensuring that the address is standardized, ensuring that we have the street number in the right field, ensuring we have the street name in the right field, ensuring we have the right post description of a road or a highway or a street or an avenue. And then ultimately, once the address is standardized and is of good quality, we then enrich that address with highly accurate latitudes and longitudes so that we can make smart decisions on a given property. And let's go to the next slide.
Yeah, and Tim, just to add another key point, the reason why this geo addressing is so valuable is the way we do it is we multi-source. We've got 14 different sources on top of the USPS, and that gives us additional inventory that most carriers don't have. So they really have that true, the source of truth of really how many addresses are in a neighborhood or at a building. And it also gives the fact that we've got that multi-source gives you the ability to have the accuracy. Whereas if you're just looking at the USPS, you're only seeing some addresses and the address is not accurate. So I think that really kind of rounds out why we provide value. Thanks, Tim. I'm going to keep going.
Totally agree. Yeah, and so once we have a good quality address, the next important step that we see is enriching that address. So improving the insights or the understanding of what's going on at that address. What's going on at that address, and I won't go through all the different pieces here, but if we think about important things that a telecom would like to know about a given address, how big is this property? How many buildings are on this property? Is it a single family residence or a single business at this property, or is it a multifamily property with 100 apartments, or multi-business commercial high-rise with multiple businesses working inside of it? Do we trust that this is a serviceable location? Do we understand that this is a real address with confidence? Do we understand insights about what kinds of activities are going on there? And we'll go into over the next couple slides just to keep things moving. Some ways that this data enrichment can come into play and help a network provider make smarter decisions on a given property. So let's go to this next slide, and it's a build slide, Danny, so it's going to be a little fun. So if we think about a property like this, as a network provider, you may just have originally have just a single address for this property. But as we can tell as Danny's building this out, there's a whole lot more we could understand about this property. We could understand that this property is actually, it looks like a apartment complex, right? And it looks like it has 24 buildings, and it has 186 secondary addresses. And we've enriched it then with census data to better understand the population that lives in this property so that we can make smarter offers to them. We understand, we have a highly accurate description of the address. We also understand things like what neighborhood this is in, what school districts, what's the underlying business that's doing business here. And all these insights can certainly play a role and help a network provider make better decisions about this property as they look to, one, decide if they're going to build, two, once they build, how will they put together a product that ultimately they can sell to this property and engage and convert that network investment into revenue. So, Danny, from here, are we going back to you to talk a little bit about how we do this from an operational perspective?
Yeah, I'm going to go to the next slide. Thanks, Tim. Yes, so this is from a relationship standpoint. Tim just described the specifics, all the additional attributes that we provide in order to give insight to make those important decisions. But what we do in order to accomplish this is we've got that unique identifier, the precise ID, that connects that address to all the attributes, the building, the parcel, the ownership information, the firmographic information, the demographic information. So it's important, that unique identifier, the value in that is that it allows a carrier to basically to overlay this information, and the connections are already built, the relationship's already built. What that means is you don't need your IT team to build these connections. Okay, that's number one. Number two, you don't need your IT team to manage these connections because things change all the time. So we've kind of got this process where we've got the connections already built, address, and then all these 9,000 attributes. And what that ultimately leads to is savings when it comes to having this solution help operationalize this data. So that's important. The other key thing is that we update it every month, in most cases, sometimes quarterly. And that's important because the street names change from every quarter, as there's new build outs or there's changes within those addresses, we're updating them. So it's important to work with a solution that's consistently updated. We find that there are many other types of providers out there that update once a year. So your data gets stale and you're not able to use the data, and it's not accurate anymore. So this is kind of how we do it from that perspective. As we roll through this, it's what you notice here is that in this slide right here, the carrier has the customer information. The carrier has the network information. They have the inventory information. But what's important, and we get back to what Tim described earlier, is that wouldn't it be nice to know if this location is vacant or if it's occupied? Is it serviceable? Is it residential? Is it business? How many units are there? Because your building system says 50, your design system says 60, but we want to know the source of truth. So by having all these additional attributes connected with your customer information, your network information, your inventory information, you've now got that great view where you can provide, number one, excellent service to your customers. You have the insight to make the decisions as far as what you're going to campaign to your customers. You're going to be able to accurately design and plan and know the true cost, as opposed to, Tim showed you that example where the locations were all over the place. They were across the street. You don't want to have that. You want to know exactly rooftop locations so you can do the precise, accurate planning. So this is kind of how we do it, by connecting it all together to that unique identifier. So I'm going to pass it back to you.
Yeah, so this is another, I'm going to roll through 3 quick examples here just to keep us on time. But if we think about a property like this, so this is a commercial property with multiple, lots and lots of things going on at this property. Typically, in order for a provider to assess this property, it would require physical presence, boots on the ground, walking the property, understanding as much detail as they can about a property before they make decisions on whether or not they are going to invest in lighting up this property with network capabilities. In this case, though, with just a couple joins by IDs, we're able to understand the total number of addresses associated to this property. If you see in the middle, this precisely IDs, that's our unique and persistent ID per address. We identify the buildings that are on the property. We identify the underlying parcels, which parcels come into play here a lot of times because of ownership. So parcels help you better understand who actually owns the land underneath it. And if you think about as a fiber provider, you're going to have to make sure and interact with those owners to get the approvals you need to build on this property. So better understanding of the complexity of ownership with the underlying land or the management of the property itself. And then we see points of interest. Points of interest could be anything from an ATM inside of a building to the actual owner of that building or operator of that building, management company of that building, to all of the lessees inside of this. So each of these 26 points of interest has 85 fields that would describe the business that's at each of those IDs, what they do as a business, how many employees they have at that location, what's their ownership structure, are they a standalone business, or they have some sort of relationship to a holding company or a larger financial entity. So think of all this information that we see on this one slide coming to view for a network planner or for a seller or a marketer within seconds versus hours or days of physical inspection of this property. The next one, Danny, if we can forward to the next one real quick, and I'll bounce through this one again. So this is looking at this particular example is probably more on the build out side. So understanding common ownership of properties and understanding the relationship of that ownership structure. If we're targeting a primary parcel, which in this case is the picture that we showed before, we can now unlock additional insights and understand that there's actually parcels surrounding this property that are owned by the same entity, which can help us better understand the ease in which we will be able to interact with a common set of owners to execute construction, or help us make important decisions on how wide our network needs to be in order to support a property. So if we start to understand that there's more properties at play here with the same owner, possibly with the same entities involved, and if we want to approach, say this was an insurance company with a campus, you would not want to make the mistake of only lighting up the yellow property. You'd want to make sure that you light up all the properties owned by that insurance company at that campus. So let's go to the next slide. Last example here is if we go to the sales side. So think of certainly on consumer side, it's usually we can buy lists, we can buy contact data or marketing lists to market to consumers within a neighborhood. It gets a little bit harder if you think about a seller from the telecom that is trying to figure out who should I approach to make an offer to convert this property into whatever service that I provide. In this case, we've heard from many sales organizations with telecoms that they spend hours of their day trying to do research to unlock details about the ownership structure of a property, contact information for those owners. In this case, with a simple join, again, just a second, a seller can unlock information to understand, excuse me, the name of the owners of this property, contact information for that ownership structure, and details about how to get in touch with them. So we're cutting hours out of a sales process to enable a seller to get back down to the business of actually trying to convert potential subscribers into actual subscribers by enabling them to have the right details to begin that engagement process. Let's go to the next slide, Danny. And so, just in summary, we for this part of the discussion, we've talked about how leveraging the right technology and the right data from our perspective that comes from Precisely can help you with serviceability decisions, can help you better understand your customers, can enable automation so that more processes within the provisioning, within the network identification process can be automated so that you can move more parts of an onboarding process into self-service. Ultimately, we're enabling through this connection of data and technology to enable a telecom to convert their network into money by enabling the faster conversion and cross-sell and upsell of new network investments, ultimately to drive subscriber growth. So at its core, I think, and we've talked about a wide variety of examples, this understanding of location and enrichment of that location with additional details ultimately enables all of these topics, all of these business opportunities to be executed on with efficiency and with speed and with confidence in the data that you're using. And as we wrap up today, I think this last part, Danny's going to take over and talk about how we typically help our customers in the telecom space think about the value of this automation that we bring to all these important decisions, and how our customers can begin to represent a return on investment for making these types of projects. So, Danny?
Yeah, so what we try to do is we have a team that's actually called our value engineering and business architecture team. This team sits with our customers and we walk through the key performance indicators. Companies want to grow, they want to sell more, they want to reduce costs, they want to mitigate risks, they want to have the information to make powerful decisions that are going to drive those key values. So we sit with the customer, we understand, from their numbers, their additional addressable market, the areas that they will be able to save when it comes to accuracy, design and planning and efficiencies. And we take this data, based on their key performance indicators, based on their 10K, the annual reports, and work through a business justification proposal that they're in agreement with. And at the end of the day, they've got to have that value and they've got to have the return on investment in order to spend a dollar. And so this process works really well because we go through a proof of concept with them. We'll take a small part of their market. We'll understand kind of the key areas of challenges that they're faced with. And we've described a lot of challenges. We'll focus on those and we'll demonstrate how we provide value. And then we'll take those numbers the key metrics that we've gathered from that proof of concept and create this business justification. So this is an example where you see here, that our customers be like, hey, we can improve sales by X amount of money. We can reduce costs by X amount of money. We can be more efficient. And so you kind of build out this ROI. So this is an example. And at the end of the day, it's a joint collaboration to get to these numbers. And this is how our customers are able then to go to their senior leadership, talk about the proof of concept, the value that it brought, and then bring the true numbers that they're able to execute. And a lot of times, they're able to do much better than the business case, but we want to be conservative. So this is the process we walk through to ensure that there is true value that Precise is bringing to the table. So as we go through here, that's, this is sort of like, kind of a extrapolation of the previous slide. And I would like to now summarize, kind of what we walked through today. Hold on. We don't want to get to the summary screen. I guess the summary should, all right, so I'll kind of just walk through, at the end of the day, we talked about the trends in the marketplace. We talked about the challenges that carriers are facing. We talked about how important it is to have accuracy when it comes to the address, and that accuracy leads to all these different processes that can be improved to drive additional revenue, reduce costs. We talked about how we can connect all that additional insight with the enrichment of data, and then ultimately creating a return on investment, a business justification. So we appreciate the time today, and I think there's some questions. I'm going to turn it back to Jim to kind of walk us through some of those questions.
Great, thanks Danny and Tim. Really interesting presentation. I didn't realize just the granularity and all the complexity involved in being able to capture and leverage location data. So yeah, there are some questions here, about 4 or 5 questions, and I think we should be able to get to at least 2 or 3 of them. One of them was related to BEAD, and that is, you had sort of a business case, kind of an ROI value. The question, I guess, is kind of, can you apply some of these same principles to helping telecom providers with their BEAD funding initiatives or proposals? Whoever wants, Danny or Tim, who wants to take that one?
Yeah,
Tim, you want to address that one?
I think we both certainly know this one well. But yeah, so for those of you that may be unfamiliar, BEAD is a federal funding program that the government has earmarked. Gosh, I think it's $45 billion. I'm doing that one a little bit off the cuff, but I think it's around $45 billion that have been earmarked for investment in rural America to enable the build out of infrastructure to deliver broadband to areas that have been underserved. So they're passing this money out to telecoms to then enable the telecoms to then build out in those areas that may not be quite as profitable as some of the areas that they tend to pick, because they're serving fewer customers with longer runs of networks. So in order to do this, telecoms have to decide where they want to apply for that funding. So what areas within their market does it make sense for them to go ask the federal government for funding to build out the network? As you can see, we've got a lot of data here, and we're helping our customers better decide the areas that they want to target. Once they target it, they're given a specific amount of funding, from the federal government to build out the network in that area. So it's imperative, because the profit margins tend to be a little bit smaller in these rural areas. It's imperative that the network providers build out in the most efficient way that they can. So they're, again, using the data that we've talked about today to enable efficiencies in making decisions on building out that network. And then lastly, if you take funding from the government requires that you prove that you actually did whatever you promised to do with that funding. So the last step of this process, and it actually is the one that most of the providers are wrestling with right now is matching up the coverage areas that they've now lit up, with these network investments to the total number of doors passed or the total number of homes in an area. And so again, we've got lots of data and technology that's enabling our customers to help with that compliance effort to enable them to show the government that they've delivered on that promise.
Okay.
Yeah, and just to add a little bit more, what Tim was talking about, the attributes of knowing, the full addressable market of inventory is so important, because they may decide to start in an area so they can recapture the money they spent first, and then kind of move out. So they want to know exactly how many units are there. They want to know which sales team should be targeting them, and that kind of gets back to whether it's residential or business, and what size of the business. So all that important ownership information is critical, HOA information, so they know who to target. All that additional attributes helps guide the carrier to make those decisions and actually do it efficiently, and be able to, again, bring revenue in quickly. So it's important to have all that information when you're going after this needs.
Understood. Okay. We're going to get to a couple more questions, but before we do, the operator said at the beginning that there's a survey for the audience. So if you can, for the audience members, if you can complete the survey before you sign off today, it would help us plan for future sessions. So we appreciate your input on this. So a couple more questions. And this one it's about actually your Precise's implementation. So I'm going to kind of paraphrase it, but at the end of the day, is what kind of product variation, is your Precisely product? Can it be deployed as a SaaS product?
Yeah, so the solutions can be deployed as a SaaS model. It can be deployed on premise. It can be deployed at a third party like a Snowflake, Databricks that we're natively integrated with. So really, it's a matter of how you prefer to deploy our solutions. We want to work within your goals. Majority of folks that we're working with now are moving into the cloud, and usually in some sort of Amazon infrastructure. But yeah, it can be deployed in any number of ways to support your goals and your objectives.
Okay. And then we've got time for maybe one more question here. And it kind of goes back to, I think, Tim, you were talking about this, about how you deal with a number of different clients on different scenarios. And one of them was related to mergers and acquisitions. So I guess the question is, how do you kind of help these customers with merger acquisitions when there's a lot of sort of bad data that they maybe are presenting to you, and you have to sort of validate it or compare it to your own information? How does that process actually work?
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah. So if we go back to what Danny said, if we think about way at the beginning, when Danny talked about the pillars of modules of capabilities that we provide as a company. So if you think about a merger that's happened, so two companies have come together, each with distinct systems for every aspect of their business. And obviously a merger happens so that, with the goal of making more money and efficiencies out of joining two together. So our capability to find data in both of those organizations, grab that data and pull it into new systems, new applications, our ability to catalog the data to better understand where the data came from, ensure the quality of that data, ultimately join it together into new applications. And if we start to think about overlapping network capabilities, so we may have a broadband carrier that's bought now a wireless carrier, and trying to understand, okay, how does my fiber network overlay with this new tower network, and what are efficiencies that we can gain by joining these two together? So we're using all the different components of Precisely, from data integration through data quality, through geolocation and spatial analytics and data enrichment, the breadth of all those capabilities to ultimately join that data together to help this new merged entity monetize that merger as quickly as possible.
Okay. Perfect. But Danny, do you want to add something really quickly? We got only a few seconds left here. Do you want to add something? Is that pretty much covered it?
I think Tim nailed it. Thank you, Tim.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so we're going to wrap up there. We're at the top of the hour. So again, Tim and Danny, excellent presentation. Thank you for providing myself and the audience an excellent overview of all the ins and outs, the complexities, the opportunities, the challenges of leveraging location data. So for light reading, this is Jim Hodges. Thanks everyone for attending today's session, and we hope to see you again in the near future. Thank you.